We're going to start looking at remote nervous system manipulation with no contact tonight. This is going to be a multi-part series. It may not be in succession, but nonetheless, this information tonight is going to lay groundwork for upcoming information that will be coming out over the next 30 to 60 days. So if you can stay awake, stay awake. If not, then you can catch it on the archives. So I'm going to send out all this information in YouTube land. For those of you not in YouTube land, go to PATRIOT'S.com, go to the shows page and look for this icon right here. It says Big Tech. You can find the show notes, read, watch, think for yourself. And it's right here, Big Tech Notes, archives. Find me on Twitter, Human Internet 1. Parlor is just Human Internet. So I opened up a Parlor account, and for now, that's it. I've got a Gab account, but I'm not really maintaining that yet. Soon. So let's get started. We have a lot of information to get through and not a lot of time. We are going to begin. We're on episode 64. And what we're going to look at is a company in Israel by the name of BrainQ. That's right. The name of the company is BrainQ. So Google funds BrainQ, startup program, the venture capital component, if you will, of Google. They're funding this company. Microsoft is also funding this company. So Israeli startup BrainQ tapped for Google AI program. And basically, it just says that Israeli startup BrainQ Tech has been chosen to participate in Google's prestigious artificial intelligence development program in San Francisco. 4 startups from around the world have been chosen to participate. BrainQ is working on a product designed to enable paralyzed patients to walk. BrainQ's technology uses a combination of artificial intelligence and medical equipment and is designed for patients who have suffered strokes, spinal cord injuries, or head injuries. The goal of the treatment is to enable the patients to regain independent motor control. I'll say that again. The goal of the treatment is to enable patients to regain independent motor control. Using equipment that responds to patients' electronic brain signals, BrainQ employs machine learning to create a personalized rehabilitation plan. Google's program Launchpad Studio seeks out artificial intelligence companies in the medical field. Launchpad Studios from Google seeks out artificial intelligence companies in the medical field. The program, which lasts for 6 months in the company's San Francisco offices, offers participants access to Google's resources and mentorship from Google's head of research, Peter Norvig. BrainQ launched in 2016 and has 10 employees. It's currently developing its product and carrying out clinical trials in Israel. So there's another article on BrainQ, and there's other companies venture capital companies that are in on investment. And this company is very well funded. It says here the company's unique AI technology largely stems from developing and owning one of the largest known brain-computer interface-based EEG databases for motor tasks. For motor tasks, that's like muscles moving so that you walk, do things, whatever it is you're doing with your body, motor tasks, physical movement. So we're going to watch some videos, they're short, about this company, and then we're going to look at their patents. And it's important that you stay tuned while we get through these patents, because they are going to lay a foundation for wireless, no contact interface with the nervous system. And there's more to it than that, which is why we need to go through directed energy weapons and what 5G looks like and the subcomponents of 5G. If you have a pencil and a paper, write down NOMA, N-O-M-A, non-orthogonal multiple access. Write down 3D beamforming, three-dimensional beamforming. Write down QAM, QAM, and write down OFDM, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. Those are the components that we're going to look at when we start talking about 5G in upcoming episodes that have the underpinnings, right? The pieces, if you will, that illustrate the ability to modulate electromagnetic energy at distance and create power fields that are basically able to be modulated on demand. Frequencies modulated on demand, amplitudes and phase modulated on demand, and power fields modulated on demand. And that's what we're going to look at today. In these patents, they're medically based. We're going to see some very similar components. So stay tuned. Here we go.
My name is Yotam Drexler. I'm the CEO of BrainQ. BrainQ is developing an AI-based medical device aimed at getting paralyzed people following neuro disorders like stroke or spinal cord injury back on their feet. Every single year, hundreds of millions of people around the world suffer from neuro disorders. Stroke alone accounts for 15 million people every single year, and the entire neuro disorders cost to the US economy is $1.5 trillion every single year. My grandfather had a stroke several years ago. From being the center of the family, all of a sudden he became paralyzed in half of his body. That means he can no longer do simple things like grabbing a glass of water or dressing alone.
Okay, so I'm going to take this in chunks, and what he's basically talking about is somebody who's lost the ability to have their brain be able to control and translate intended motor function, being able to restore that. So that requires interfacing directly with the brain and the nervous system. And in his case, using electromagnetic fields that do things like repair nerve tissue, reinforce nerve tissue, regrow brain cells, steering brain cells into the damaged locations on demand so that they can replace lesions in the brain, for example. And we will look at that in detail.
And that's the reality for many people out there. The common treatment is what's called physical therapy. It's essentially exercising the hand or the leg back and forth. What BrainQ essentially does is modeling physical therapy and applying it directly to the brain. In a sense, we ask what happens for a patient or for a healthy person when he does an hand movement, like reaching his hand to grab a glass of water. So we get a lot of people do this kind of movements, and then we learn the patterns. We take these patterns.
He says that we learn the patterns. What he's talking about is what he's saying is that they're learning the unique brainwave signature, what the brain is doing when you reach for a glass of water, or when you tie your shoe, or when you take a fork and scoop something off a plate and put it in your mouth. All of those functions, all of those actions have a unique signature in the brain. They activate unique components in the brain. They're standard or similar across the species, and then there are subtle nuances person to person. And they're breaking this stuff down and identifying it so they can offer tailored medicine, tailored therapy. But there are general commonalities person to person to person.
That we have learned and identified and reapply it back to him as a personalized treatment. We have developed a unique brain-computer interface-based medical device that takes patients' brainwaves as an input with a set of metadata and runs machine learning algorithms in the cloud and translate them into a tailored electromagnetic treatment aimed at facilitating their central nerve system recovery process.
So he just said that they take someone's brain waves, put them through AI algorithms in the cloud, and then offer tailored electromagnetic solutions as therapy, personalized therapy through the cloud. And Google's funding this. So let's continue.
and we were very fortunate to have Google share this vision with us. We worked very closely with the GCP team on making this vision come true. We were fortunate to be on this program, and it really puts us on a fast track. In all 4 fronts, we have developed the next generation of technology with precision medicine with the studio team, Peter Norwick, and the rest of the Googlers that were very, very keen in helping us. We had a large funding round in the past couple of months, and we had several collaborations in the pipeline, and we are hoping to continue on this promising track and really bring cure to millions of people around the world. And we are fortunate to have Google with us on this journey.
So this was in 2018, this next video, BrainQ, and this is their pitch. And IBM is in Israel, and they're basically pitching their idea. And this guy, same guy, indicates that they're working with IBM. Yeah, they're working with IBM as well. It wasn't Microsoft, it's IBM. Here we go.
Ago, my grandfather had a stroke. All of a sudden, half of his body was paralyzed. He could no longer grab this bottle of water, which I brought with me, especially here. He could no longer go to a shower. This was his state, and it remained for the rest of his life. Every single year, hundreds of millions of people suffer from neuro disorders. Motor disabilities following neuro disorders are an imminent need. To give you one number, stroke alone is forecasted to cost the US healthcare economy $240 billion by 2030. But the current solution is quite limited. It's called...
So this is going to be a little more detailed, and it's important that we got to take this in steps. These are incredibly complex concepts that quite frankly, are going to change the world for the better or for the worse.
Called physical therapy, many of you know it. It's a tedious, repetitive exercise of the hand or the leg in order to retrieve some of the functionality back. But it's just not good enough. And it's been there for a while. And BrainQ is here to change this equation using data-driven tools. Our mission in BrainQ is to lift paralyzed people out of their wheelchair. And when I say lift them out of the wheelchair, I mean literally being able to walk again or grab this glass of water again. And we do so based on 2 pillars. One is several decades of brain-computer interface research, and the other is rapid developments in AI tools in the recent years.
Several decades. Brain-computer interface development and rapid development of AI tools. What we're talking about is decades of hardware that have been put into humans in order to refine software that now is available in the cloud on demand. And rather than having to cut you open with a knife, to implant something to interface with your nervous system and your brain, being able to do it with energy fields. With energy fields, no implantation required. That's where we're at, folks.
When coming to approach this unsolvable problem, call it this way, on the whiteboard, we said, why don't we model physical therapy using data tools and apply them directly to patients' brain? Well, what do I mean by model physical therapy? Let's think about the brain as a sophisticated radio, where there are many different radio stations that work in parallel. And you know, I'm holding this in my hand and I'm thinking about my wife at the very same time. And these are maybe different radio stations. And our goal is to find the right stations which are associated with specific motor functionalities which are now lost.
Did you catch what this guy just said? Basically said that the brain is a radio receiver. It's really a transceiver, but he's calling it a receiver, a radio. And they're trying to pinpoint specific, isolated components that they can tune like a radio, tune your brain, tune your nervous system like a radio to restore motor function. Now, do you think it stops at restoring motor function? You think Google is going to stop at restoring motor function? What about DARPA? What are the military applications of this? What are the intelligence covert applications of this? Oh, by the way, Israel don't they have a huge amount of tech transfer from us to Israel to China? Which means they likely share their own technology, and Google's an American company. So things to think about. Hashtag Huawei. We'll get to them. We'll get to them in an upcoming episode. I'm going to dedicate an entire episode to human bond communication and Huawei, and what Huawei really looks like, why it's being scrutinized as it is. Because it's not just about offering you a YouTube video in 2 seconds. It's so much more. Let's continue.
But the problem is that in order to do so, you need to interpret relevant data. And the relevant data, which is called EEG, the brainwaves, is a very noisy data. And you need a lot of good quality data in order to work with it. And this was a non-existent, essentially. So we had to create our own. We are the owners of one of the world's largest BCI motor task databases in the world, which we have created ourselves. And with this data, we've actually created state-of-art machine learning algorithms that can tell what are the radio stations for healthy people when they're grabbing this bottle of water, but also what happens to a patient following a stroke that can no longer hold this glass of water. What are the anomalies in the radio stations?
They have a database of brain waves of a bunch of people who are healthy, and then they can take the brain waves of an individual who is not healthy, who's had a stroke or some traumatic brain injury or something like that, compare them, and then offer stimulation to correct the signatures so that the unhealthy look more like the healthy signatures when they do a comparison. So databases of brainwaves, folks. And if we have time, we'll start looking at remote collection of brainwaves, which is posted on humaninternet.org. So we'll get there.
And with that in mind, I'd like to talk a bit about BQ 1.0, our device. So as you can see here, this is a patient sitting in the chair. Every single treatment is asked to do certain motor tasks, like grabbing this glass of water. And we are collecting his EEG data and motor data, running it to the cloud, running machine learning algorithms, and retrieving back a tailored electromagnetic treatment. It's important to say that this device is unique in several aspects. First, it's probably one of the first in the world which is a therapeutic machine learning based device, also a therapeutic cloud connected device.
Therapeutic machine learning based device and a therapeutic cloud connected device, collecting brainwaves and offering tailored electromagnetic treatments whereby the brain and the nervous system is altered or modified in a unique manner, and their specialty is focusing on motor function. Hashtag Las Vegas shooter. Hashtag Aurora. Hashtag Broward County. And on and on and on and on. Anyway.
It's non-invasive, it's patient-friendly, and it's about an hour treatment a day. And we are very fortunate to have IBM sharing with us this vision of digital therapeutics. Right now, the company is in clinical trials in several leading hospitals in Israel and abroad, and I cannot share much at this point, but I do want to give you a flavor of where this is going. What you see on the left-hand side are paralyzed rats following spinal cord injury. And you see that the starting point is, the rat was paralyzed and the spine itself is almost completely cut. And over the course of 2 months treatment, what we've seen is a 0 to 1 effect. Paralyzed rats started to walk again, and you can see the MRI DTI talks for itself, a connectivity in the spine. But I do want to share with you today also some of our results already in human.
Just the way those look, the top one, it says non-treated, and you don't have color on both sides of that sever. On the treated side, you can see that there is connectivity. So they're literally regrowing, reconnecting spinal cord. And we're going to get a little bit of that through the patents. So here we go. Yeah, it's an Israeli-based company.
This result has been just recently published in the World Congress of Neurorehabilitation. What you see here is a guy, a 32-year-old guy, following a very severe accident where he lost all motor and sensor below a certain part of his body. And over the course of 4 months treatment, he regained sensation back to his legs. And look at the MRI results. It talks for itself. And moreover, it somewhat replicates what you've seen on the left-hand side. And I just want to give it to you as a taste that we believe that we are into something very fundamental here. We are very much out of time, and I need to keep it on 4 minutes, apparently. So I will just say that we sit in Jerusalem. We are a 12-people company, well-funded, and we are with, I think, some of the most brilliant people in terms of AI and neuroscience, really all joined on this mission of bringing cure to millions of people around the world. We welcome you to join us or approach us and find a way to collaborate. Thank you.
So, let's see what this is about. Stay tuned. We're going to read through these. It needs to be done. It's not multimedia. It's going to be looking at words. Please pay attention. This is very, very important. Therapeutic electromagnetic fields. This is a BrainQ patent. So for posterity, I'll show you. BrainQ Technologies, filed in 2014, published in 2015. A device for generating a therapeutic electromagnetic field. In the examples they use here, it is including at least one conducting coil for placement in the vicinity nearby a patient. A signal generator is controllable to cause an electrical current to flow through the coil and produce a substantially spatially homogeneous electromagnetic field, which means it's the same throughout. A homogeneous. Like homogenized milk, where they press everything together. In at least a part of the patient. The electromagnetic field varies with frequency that is selectable to substantially match a characteristic operational frequency of the nervous system. So that's that radio tuner thing he was talking about. And I'm going to pull up some of these pictures before we dig into the meat of this patent. It's just the first one of a few. And this is an example where they've got somebody in a bed and coils all around. Right? This is for super targeted therapy. Here's one where it's just the head. Here's one where they're sitting in a chair. This is one where the coils and or the antennas, because in this patent, it literally says it can be antennas, doesn't have to be coils, embedded in things like the wall so that you can have freely moving patients. And they talk about that. So wearables, they talk about that in this patent. Having wearables, it can be in a belt, a collar, a wristlet, a watch, all that stuff. So let's dig into this one. We're going to move through these as quickly as possible. Therapeutic electromagnetic field. Neuroplasticity or brain plasticity is the ability of the brain and nervous system to change in response to experience and use. Neuroplasticity enables the brain to learn and remember, as well as recover function after an injury. Application of time-varying electromagnetic fields has been demonstrated as facilitating restoration of function, being able to restore function in the brain and the nervous system after trauma, stroke, and spinal cord injury. So it says in here that in this example they use throughout, it's a coil. It's wearable by the patient. So we can just say an antenna. It's wearable by the patient to emit a homogeneous electromagnetic field that is able to vary with frequency. It says here, in accordance with the embodiment of the present invention, a system, apparatus, or a device is configured to produce a time-varying electromagnetic field that varies with frequency, that is suitable for producing a therapeutic effect in a patient's nervous system. This is an electromagnetic field, no contact, potentially no contact at all. As used herein, the term treatment, and therapeutic are used to indicate any effect on the nervous system of the patient's nervous system and body, and not necessarily treatment of a disease, injury, or other disorder. So therapeutic treatment, right, is any effect on the nervous system and doesn't necessarily mean treatment of a disease, injury, or disorder. Interesting, huh? How they write that. For example, the terms treatment, or therapeutic may refer to treatment of a medical condition to be understood as including any mild or severe physiological or sociological condition, or to reduce pain. So anxiety, stress, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, you name it. Treatment. Manipulating your cognition, your state of mind. So, to other health-related benefits, for example, to maintain, enhance, or prevent deterioration of function of the patient's body or physiological state, right? So if you're in a coma, they can artificially stimulate your muscles so you don't atrophy because you're not moving if you're in a coma. For aesthetic purposes, stimulating muscles to achieve a desired body shape or skin tone, or for mental effects, improvement or maintenance of cognitive abilities to improve skills related to social interactions, to affect a mood change, for inducing a pleasurable feeling or a state of mind. For training purposes, sports-related or other muscle training, mental training, improvement of a skill, or other training or learning. This is no contact, folks. No contact, or other effects. Medical treatment may include restoring nerve function, repairing damaged connections among nerves. Any person to whom the electromagnetic field is applied, whether for medical or other purposes, is herein referred to as a patient. This is the important part. Please don't forget this part, because when we start looking at medical patents, a lot of the stuff we're going to see are coils, but just listen very carefully. As used herein, an electromagnetic field is used to refer to one or both of a time-varying magnetic field that is created by the application of an electric field. For example, a coil, an antenna, or an other conductor. So it doesn't have to be a coil, even though the examples they use show a coil. The reason they show a coil is because in a medical setting, super targeted, super refined therapy, you'd want a coil. That doesn't mean that it can't be done with an antenna. Hashtag 5G. Just wait, it gets better. So, a time-varying magnetic field that induces an electric field or current in a material, such as that of the nervous system. Electromagnetic field strength is herein defined as units of a magnetic field strength. And in this case, they're using the Gauss. There are many ways to measure magnetic field strength. These patents use Gauss. And we're going to see just how little power is required, how little magnetic field strength is required to induce a nervous system or a brain manipulation. Here we go. A selected frequency may correspond to a frequency of a time-varying electromagnetic field that is characteristic of operational frequency of a function or a region of the nervous system. So they're selecting a time-varying electromagnetic field oscillation that matches a tuning resonance of a piece of your nervous system or a portion of your brain or a neural circuit in your brain. That's what that's saying. It's otherwise known or suspected to have a therapeutic effect on the nervous system, or that is being tested for a therapeutic effect on the nervous system. For example, the frequency may be in the range of 0.01 hertz to 100 hertz. The example corresponding to frequencies of brain activity. In some cases, the frequency may be in the range of 0.01 hertz to 40 hertz or 3 hertz to 40 hertz. In some cases, a patient may be treated by a portable therapeutic electromagnetic field system, hashtag cell phone, hashtag Wi-Fi, tablet, laptop, television, wirelessly connected alarm system, wirelessly connected thermostat, wirelessly connected camera, because they all emit electromagnetic radiation. A frequency of a generated therapeutic electromagnetic field may be selected for a particular treatment. For example, a frequency may be appropriate to a general region or functionality of the brain or the nervous system. For example, motor, memory, or other general functionality, and they're referring to portions of the brain that are responsible for control of your motor functions or your memory or some other general functionality. A frequency may be appropriate to a particular region or functionality of the brain or nervous system. For example, a movement of a particular limb or muscle, particular type of cognitive ability, or other particular functionality. So imagine that your left arm and your right arm are mapped and stored in a database, and on demand, they can stimulate one versus the other. Or your legs, or your hands, or your feet, or your neck. In some cases, the plurality of signals of different frequencies may be concurrently applied at the same time to different coils or antennas of the therapeutic electromagnetic field system. In this manner, more than one region or functionality may be treated concurrently. So now we're talking about multiple strings on Pinocchio. More than one signal at different frequencies may be used at the same time. The time variation of the therapeutic electromagnetic field may thus be a superposition of the various applied frequencies. Here we go with the field strengths, folks. And I'm working on FCC, current FCC regulation, and I'm going to do a stare and compare at this kind of stuff. The way it's written with the FCC, you have to do mathematical conversions. I'm not that far yet. I started looking at that again today, and I haven't looked at it for months. So that's coming. But this is why cyber is so important, because with the current regulation, these field strengths are absolutely possible. 100% guaranteed these field strengths are possible with your phone, your laptop, your computer, your television, your Wi-Fi router, cell phone towers, you name it. And I'll show you after we read this paragraph. Field strengths of the electromagnetic field, example, the amplitude of the electromagnetic field may be below 100 Gauss. In some cases, the field strength may be below 50 Gauss or below 10 Gauss. In some cases, the field strength may be below 5 Gauss. For example, to conform to standards that are intended to eliminate possible interference with pacemakers. Field strengths may be below 0.5 Gauss, except, important, where the intention is to induce a palpable or sensible effect on the nervous system. What does that mean? That means that 0.5 Gauss may or may not induce a noticeable change where you're like, why am I twitching? Why am I all of a sudden feeling happier or more sad or having that pleasurable induced feeling like they mentioned earlier on in this patent? 0.5 Gauss. So let's look at 0.5 Gauss and let's see how many Tesla that is. 0.5 Gauss is 0.00005 Tesla. And that is a definition of magnetic field, basically density. The magnetic field flow, as if you were to liken it to water flowing through a pipe. Now, that falls well within FCC regulation. The conversions need to be made into what they call an Oerstad, and then into a centimeter, an ampere per centimeter or ampere per meter conversion. But that's coming. Just know that 0.5 Gauss is enough to manipulate your brain and your nervous system. 0.5 Gauss of a magnetic field, which can be generated with an electromagnetic wave. So let's continue. A therapeutic electromagnetic field system may be utilized to selectively exercise muscles of the patient. For example, an electromagnetic field of a particular frequency may be applied to cause the nervous system to tighten a particular muscle. For example, by an amount that does not result in noticeable movement. Oh, just a subtle little tightening or a tension. The tightening of the muscle may be beneficial for rehabilitative purposes, for weight loss, or for other health or aesthetic purposes. Concurrent application of fields of different frequencies, for example, by different coils or antennas, or even by the same coil or antenna, may enable simultaneous activation of different muscles. Does anyone want a Cirque du Soleil? Will that be an app one day that Google offers where you can learn how to Cirque du Soleil and they just automate your body for you? Doesn't that sound fun? Let's see what else is in this one before we move on. A body region treatment system may be configured to apply treatment to a head, to provide treatment for a condition or a disorder such as autism, cerebral palsy, familial dysautonomia, or conditions that involve neural degeneration in the brain like Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, multiple sclerosis, or other conditions involving the brain or nervous system, as well as head trauma, stroke, or other head injuries. Volume electromagnetic field system is configured to apply a therapeutic electromagnetic field to one or more patients within a volume. Now, that might sound funny, but let's go back and look at this. A volumetric electromagnetic field system would be like, I don't know, a few antennas in a room so that you can have free moving patients. That's what they mean by a volumetric treatment system. You don't have to be lying in a bed. You don't have to have something directly around your body. It doesn't have to be a bulky looking electrical device. That's the point. The point is this stuff can be embedded in the walls, or the point is this stuff can travel through the walls and still interface with you and provide therapy. Therapy. Right? So, thus, when being treated, unrestrained patients may move freely within the confines of the volume and may shift positions, stand or sit. So, using a volume electromagnetic field system to treat unrestrained patients may be advantageous, especially in treating brain disorders. For example, a patient that is to be treated for an extended period of time may have difficulty sitting or lying throughout the period of treatment. Some patients, for example, children or others with conditions that cause difficulties with sitting still or lying still, may have difficulty staying in one place for even short periods of time. Some patients, for example, young children, claustrophobic individuals, or others, may require the close presence of another person, for example, a parent, a relative, or an acquaintance, to overcome any fear of the therapeutic electromagnetic field generation device. Portable therapeutic electromagnetic field systems may include one or more of neck coils. Anyone seen those guys running around with the dog collar Bluetooths, where it's this collar you wear around your neck and the little earbuds come out with little strings and go in your ears? One or more neck coils to be worn as a collar on the neck of a patient. Limb coils to be worn as a cuff or otherwise. Oh, you mean like a smartwatch? And trunk coils to be worn, such as a sash, a brace, or otherwise on a trunk. Do you remember the Project Jacquard? Google's Project Jacquard, where they're interweaving conductive materials into clothing to offer capacitive touch sensing functionality so that you can use your clothes to interface with your mobile device? Yeah. Wearables, folks. Connected wearables will be able to do things like this. Operation of neck coils or of limb coils or of trunk coils may apply a therapeutic electromagnetic field to the neck, limb, or trunk of a patient. For example, neck coils may be operated to stimulate the muscles related to swallowing or speech. Limb coils or trunk coils may be operated to stimulate muscles related to limb or trunk, just as an example. So let's go to the next one. Regeneration. I just closed the wrong one. Hang on. Hang on. This is the one we want. System and method for generating electromagnetic treatment protocols for the nervous system. Again, this is BrainQ. Electromagnetic treatment protocols for the nervous system. Originally in 2016, we were looking at the 2019 patent. System includes a communication interface for receiving information that includes data collected from an array of neural activity sensors that were placed on a patient during a session of applied stimuli. Oh, wait, no, that's okay. Well, we don't have to worry about it because I'm not wearing any sensors. Well, you know what? You are. And if not now, maybe some other time, right? You remember these electronic devices with configurable capacitive proximity sensors? Apple product headphones, they're not the only ones. This is just one example. Earphones with sensors, earbuds with capacitive sensors, These are the standards you get with the iPhone. Wireless earbuds will record your EEG and send brainwave data to your phone. This is from the IEEE, right? And this talks about treating various neurological disorders using synchronized nerve activation with something you place in your ear that taps into your vagus nerve and your trigeminal nerve. Here's some more examples. And because these things have sensors in them, electrodes in them for sensing, they literally are able to generate capacitive fields, which are electric fields, which induce corresponding magnetic field. That's just one example. If you're not satisfied with that example, right, we can look at watches. And we haven't even gone into no contact yet. Dual EEG, no contact monitor with personal EEG monitor for concurrent brain monitoring and communication, being able to transmit thoughts artificially over the network, right? Synthetic telepathy by Freer logic, using things like transcranial magnetic stimulation. And we just saw in this other patent that it takes 0.5 Gauss or less, and you won't even actively notice a change in your nervous system, muscle, brain, or whatever, which means that the fields necessary to do this kind of a thing are incredibly small. The power generation, the power transmission, power characteristics are incredibly small to get this done. While we're here, I might as well show you this, because this is no brain wave reading before we continue. Brain communication, remote control, apparatus and method for remotely monitoring and altering brain waves. This was back in 1974. Persons can be continuously monitored. Seizures, sleepiness, dreaming can be detected. Bodily functions such as pulse, rate, heartbeat, regularity, and others can be monitored. Hallucinations can be detected. Medical diagnosis of patients from remote stations. A profile of the entire brainwave emission pattern may be monitored, or select areas of the brain may be observed in a single measurement simply by altering the scan angle and direction of the antennas. There is no physical contact for transmission to the brain to alter the natural brain waves in a desired fashion. The closed-loop compensating system permits instantaneous and continuous modification of the brainwave response pattern. This was in 1974. This was in 1998, a method for enabling human beings to communicate by way of their monitored brain activity, right? A system capable of identifying particular nodes in an individual's brain, the firings of which affect characteristics such as appetite, hunger, thirst, communication skills. For example, which nodes are utilized to communicate certain words, such as yes, no, or phrases such as I don't know or I'm not sure. Thought processes, depression, and the like. These centers may be energized in a predetermined manner or sequence to remotely cause a particular identified brain node to be fired, to cause a predetermined feeling or reaction in the individual, such as a lack of hunger, or a lack of depression, or a lack of thirst, or a lack of aggression, or a lack of Alzheimer's disease, or the like. And it gets better. This is a Russian patent that discusses using the very same frequencies we use for telecommunications transmission, as well as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, and on, 1.5 to 5.0 gigahertz, right? Creates a new channel for transmitting information between the brain of a person or a mammal and a computer. Create a real-time hardware complex for mapping the microwave activity of the brain in a fairly narrow frequency range. Applications of this invention for both peaceful and military purposes, right, can be created in the near future. Analysis of microwave bioelectric activity of the brain under normal and pathological conditions. Diagnosis of functional and emotional states of the brain, for example, depression, aggression, emotional instability, mental disorders, and mental diseases for examination, both military, medical, social, clinical, social, and labor. Now, these sound like collectivist terms, don't they? For neurological and neurosurgical practice, for military medicine and disaster medicine. And this patent talks about being able to modulate neuronal activities, sensing and modulating neuronal activities with radio frequency electromagnetic waves. Being able to do that and simultaneously monitoring your breathing rate and your heart rate. And this one talks about being able to eliminate the fighting strength of an opponent combatant using electromagnetic waves. This is a world patent, and China has one. Being able to do things like have your brain excrete the sleep hormone that you get when you're in deep REM sleep, being able to do that on demand and sever the brain's ability to communicate with your muscles. This stuff has been done, folks. It's done. It's already done. Here's one for enhancing brain activity. That's the one that we're going to read in a moment. So we digressed for a minute, but I wanted to show you that it's not just BrainQ, but Google, IBM, and other venture capitalists are funding BrainQ to be able to understand the AI, the algorithms, ultimately having access to the database that connects everybody. Because we all use the infrastructure, Google's infrastructure, Facebook's infrastructure, Twitter's infrastructure, all of it. We're all connected. That means something. It's not just because you have an internet service. It's not just because you have a cell phone at all. It's so much more. So systems and methods for generating electromagnetic treatment, right? Because we're looking at the medical side. Protocols for the nervous system. This invention relates to treatment of the nervous system. More particularly, the present invention relates to a system and a method for generating electromagnetic treatment protocols for the nervous system. Application of time-varying electromagnetic fields have been demonstrated as facilitating restoration of function in the brain and the nervous system after trauma, stroke, and spinal cord injury. Application of such therapeutic electromagnetic fields shows potential for future use to treat other conditions of the brain or the nervous system, such as autism, Alzheimer's disease, epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, or other conditions. Present invention, applied stimuli, includes a stimulus selected from a group of stimuli consisting of an attempt to actively perform a physical or cognitive task, passive movement of a body part, or sensory input. So that's a real complex way of saying they're looking for the right resonant circuit. They're going to tune to the right neural circuit based on what they have in the database to get them close and then make the subtle manipulations person to person. So another embodiment of the present invention indicated impaired functionality being able to be identified and stored as clinical data. Storing your unique nervous system and brainwave signatures as clinical data. In accordance with an embodiment of the present invention, the generated treatment protocol defines a characteristic of the applied electromagnetic field selected from a group of characteristics consisting of amplitude and duration. So the power, how much power is in the magnetic field, and how long is that being applied based on accessing and referencing a database and comparing and contrasting whatever they find in the database with whatever your issue is. Generated treatment protocol defines a characteristic of a series of applied electromagnetic fields selected from a group of characteristics consisting of an order of an application of an electromagnetic field having different frequencies. So this goes back to many, many frequencies, many, many fields all at the same time. An interval between successive applications of electromagnetic fields and a frequency of applications of the electromagnetic field. So what does this mean? It just means complex algorithms accessing the database, pulling different pieces out of the database like a recipe and applying it to a brain or a nervous system. Potentially doing things like automating you, or automating your thoughts, or automating your emotions. Notice I said potentially. Just for any of you out there that go, oh my God. Potentially. My disclaimer. Furthermore, in accordance with an embodiment of the present invention, the monitoring sensor includes a thermal camera. Now, why a thermal camera? You'd want to know if tissue is heating up, and you also want to be able to evaluate blood flow. Let me show you why. I'll show you why. Camera technology. With a camera, they can estimate your brain activity. Brain activity estimation device. The camera can acquire the photographed image by data from a common camera, which can simplify this device, right? So common camera, something like what's on your cell phone or your computer, right? Human brain activity can be estimated very easily. Aspects of this present invention wherein the photographed image data is acquired by an infrared camera, which pretty much comes standard nowadays. Therefore, the brain activity estimation device can obtain the photographed image data regardless of the brightness of the external environment. Wow, Face ID, really? Well, Face ID needs to have an infrared sensor to be able to understand what those infrared rays are doing when it bounces off your face. So there is technically an infrared camera in that. Oh, and your CCD cameras have things like double stacked CCDs, which means that they can digitally turn off and turn on filters like the infrared filter on your double and triple stack CCD cameras, which come standard in just about every electronic device now. Examples of the image data acquisition means include a portable terminal with a built-in photographing device, such as a smartphone or a tablet. In this case, in this patent, they're talking about using an iPad to be able to do this kind of stuff. Your iPad is able to estimate your brain activity, folks. Talks about data on the blood circulation, the amount of the facial surface is calculated based on the red, green, and blue data, so the basic three colors, right? From a time series photographed image. So what that means is taking video or taking a series of photographs, comparing and contrasting the blood circulation based on the red, green, and blue pixelations that are red, and or the infrared, or a compare and contrast of those things. From the camera in something like an iPad. Talks about looking at discharge heat generated by the brain activity using the forehead or the paranasal sinus peripheral region. That's the front of your face, from your eyes up to your hairline. Looking at that. Change in the blood circulation amount of the facial surface, accompanied with the brain activity, appears at the forehead and or the paranasal sinus peripheral region. Brain activity can be estimated with high accuracy as long as a change in the blood circulation amount in at least the forehead or the paranasal sinus peripheral region of the facial surface can be captured. So what's that mean? You're looking straight on at the device, or you have just a minor offset. You turn your head a little bit. So you can't measure this stuff with your head, with the back of your head facing the camera is what this thing is saying. Determining emotion using camera-based sensing. This is on humaninternet.org if you want to go read this stuff for yourself. Physiological parameter monitoring with a mobile communications device. It talks about using a camera. This was funded by the Office of Naval Research in 2012. This patent was published. And there's more. I'm still building this thing as time permits. There's more and more and more and more and more that will be added to this site on humaninternet.org. So let's go back and we went there because in this patent, it discusses using a thermal camera as a monitoring sensor in order to be able to understand what the appropriate electromagnetic fields need to be as it relates to application to the nervous system and the brain for therapy. All of which come in a nice compact device known as a cell phone, or a laptop, or a tablet. In accordance with an embodiment of the present invention, a protocol for treatment by a time-varying magnetic field is automatically generated by the system. Hashtag algorithm, or AI. The oscillating electromagnetic field is characterized by a frequency and amplitude or intensity. Now, this is important. A frequency, an amplitude, or intensity. All of these things relate to how wireless communications work. We are going to get here, but we need to lay down the foundation of what this potentially can do to you with no contact. Frequency, amplitude, or intensity. Those terms that I mentioned earlier, NOMA, 3D beamforming, QAM, and OFDM. Those are the components that translate what these words right here mean. They're all ways to modulate information in order to improve and speed up internet over a wireless network. And they are the same functions that can be used to apply therapeutic electromagnetic fields to a human. As used herein, the term intensity and amplitude are used interchangeably to represent an amplitude, maximum, average, root mean square, or other characteristic or representative value indicative of the strength of an applied electromagnetic field, or characterizing a spectrum of a measured neural activity signal. Yeah, this is a depends episode tonight, Roddy. This will lay foundation for many, many more episodes when we start getting into directed energy systems and other things, like being able to program the brain, cerebral programming, neuro enhancement, manipulation of the autonomic nervous system using energy. We're going there very, very soon. Neural activity measurements may be acquired from the patient concurrently with the stimulus session that includes successive application of one or more stimuli. Stimulus may be applied actively by the patient. For example, the patient may perform a voluntary physical task, a rest state, moving of a limb or a body part, resisting a movement of a limb or a body part, speaking, interesting, controlling breathing, looking at an object, or another active physical task. So these are physical therapy functions, folks. A cognitive task, such as a rest state, imagining a situation. Oh, really? Thinking about a particular subject, attempting to solve a problem, concentrating on selected sensory input. I wonder what that means. My mind is racing. Or another active cognitive task. Or attempting to perform a physical task, concentrating on moving a limb that is paralyzed, has been amputated, or that is restrained, or another voluntary active task. A stimulus may be applied by an outside agent during which time the patient remains passive. For example, a limb or a body part of the patient may be moved by an outside agent, physical therapy, right? By another person or by a machine. Patient may be subjected to a sensory input or may be otherwise passively stimulated. Application of a stimulus may include concurrent or alternating application of two or more different stimuli. Active or passive application of stimulus is interchangeably referred to herein as performance of a task. So this is a long-winded paragraph of being able to say that they're trying and attempting or successful at quantifying what goes on in your brain and your nervous system when you do anything. Move an arm, a leg, a foot, a hand, have a thought, have an impulse, have a sensation. Anything provides a measurable reading from the brain or the nervous system. And then conversely, if any of those are defective from a therapeutic perspective, being able to stimulate the appropriate piece or component of the nervous system or the brain, because we'll read later that each one of those things have unique resonant frequencies they can tune to, like a radio, like we saw that guy talk about, to be able to restore function or to supplement function. You can enhance healthy people with this. You can literally enhance healthy people with this and make them better, worse, pick your whatever perspective you want to have. They can augment the human. They don't have to be paralyzed or damaged. This stuff works on perfectly healthy people, which they talk about in these patents. Let's continue. The measured neural activity at each identified frequency may be organized to generate a spatial activity map of the measured neural activity across the nervous system. So they're generating a spatial activity map of your brain and your nervous system. For example, the spatial position of a measured amplitude may be determined by the identity, example, and on a known at least nominal position of the sensors, which it's a medical setting, so the sensors are going to be applied to the body, but we've looked extensively at this point at wearables and no contact sensors being able to interface with your nervous system, whereby the amplitude is measured. That map may show the amplitude of neural activity at a single identified frequency at each mapped location. So do you remember last episode when we were looking at Control Labs and we were looking at Battelle and they were able to interface with the nervous system on the wrist and the arm to understand neural feedback, being able to apply stimuli in the case of Battelle to do things like improve a golf swing or to help somebody with a paralyzed limb, albeit it's still their organic limb, not a prosthetic, but it's paralyzed, to be able to artificially move it in a meaningful way like stir coffee or play Guitar Hero, if my memory serves correct. And then Control Labs, we're talking about being able to decode the brain by pulling the electrical signals out of the muscles in the wrist and the forearm. And that's just the wearable stuff, folks. One or more corresponding reference spatial activity maps, that's the things they log in the database, may be retrieved from a database or other data storage facility. The reference spatial activity maps may be retrieved on the basis of the frequency of the signal whose amplitude is spatially mapped in a corresponding generated spatial activity map. Let's just cut all that crap out and just say it can be referenced on demand. And in a real-time feedback loop, as it changes your neural activity or your behavior or your motor skills or your motor functions, then it references again in a feedback loop through the cloud and applies additional signaling where you can be animated. Talks about a spatial map for a healthy nervous system, right? Which means a person or a subject whose nervous system were determined to be functioning without any impairment, or for a nervous system that's defective, somebody who's damaged or isn't functioning properly. When one or more locations on one or more spatial maps are indicative of a defective function at one or more frequencies, a treatment protocol may be generated. Now, what would China and a social credit score do with something like this? Oh, we just registered that you've had too long of a period of time where you're mad at the Communist Chinese Party. Or we notice that every time you look at the picture of President Xi, which is posted everywhere like a dog pissing on a tree, every time you look at that, we notice a change in your brainwave function, and we don't like that. So we're just gonna, with your mandatory carry around with you at all time 5G phone, we're just gonna subtly manipulate your nervous system to give you a general sense of pleasure every time you look at Xi. And if that doesn't work, then we'll just swoop you up because our little remote fun camp isn't working for you. Our re-education through telemedicine isn't working for you. Telemedicine, folks, that's what we're talking about. That's what this whole COVID crap is pushing us to, a reliance on a digital space whereby we sit around and within electromagnetic fields and other directed energy systems like light coming out of your screen and or invisible light coming out of things like your Face ID and or the speakers which can emit ultrasound or infrasound that you cannot hear. Directed energy generating devices being pushed and steered and corralled into these systems whereby telemedicine is able to interface with the human organism. A psycho-civilized society. This is why cybersecurity is so important. This is why, in my view, Huawei is under such scrutiny. That whole crap with Iran is probably just something that is publicly digestible at this point, as it relates to the CFO, the daughter of the CEO or the owner, who's like way up there in the CCP party. It's stuff like this. The treatment protocol may be input into a device for generating a therapeutic magnetic field. Well, your phone generates one of those. Your Wi-Fi generates an electromagnetic field. So does your TV. I can show you that pattern. Manipulation of the nervous system using a monitor. Should we look at that one real quick? Let's go look at that one. We might run out of time and have to continue this, folks. But let's go look at the patent from Luce that talks about nervous system manipulation by electromagnetic fields from monitors. This was back in 2001. It's possible to manipulate the nervous system of a subject by pulsing images displayed on a nearby computer monitor or a TV set. Further on in this patent, it's beyond the electromagnetic field in a monitor. They can change the hue of the colors coming out of the pixels. They can subtly change those and induce brainwave entrainment. They can change the colors with the right frequency oscillation. They can change the gradient, the hue of the colors in an oscillation and manipulate your brain, in addition to the electromagnetic field. And that's all in this patent, which we will go over as we continue our exploration of the various ways in which the nervous system can be manipulated. But let's continue. Each identified frequency may be associated with a particular neural network. So here it is. Each identified frequency can be identified with a particular neural network, tuning like a radio. As used herein, a neural network includes components of the nervous system that are associated with a particular functionality of the nervous system, typically response to a particular stimulus or performance of a particular task may involve two or more different neural networks, right? The brain is a complex computer. For example, movement of a limb in a particular manner may include such functionalities as those related to the memory, remembering the instructions, planning, for example, the action, activation, for example, of the limb muscles, and control, for example, of the limb muscles, feedback, knowing the current position of the limb or other functionalities. So what they've done is they've broken down what it means to go, this is if you guys remember Zuckerberg in Congress, right? Grab can, bring can to lips, tilt can, purse lips, put can to lips, pour fluid in mouth, remove can from lips, close mouth, engage tongue and swallow, make pleasurable facial expression with eyes and cheeks, look serious, wait for future commands. That's basically what they're doing here. They're breaking this stuff down in this patent. Relevant frequencies may have been previously derived from analysis of measurements that were made on a population of subjects. Oh, so they have a wide variety of people that they have already taken measurements on. Now, how many people have a smartwatch? How many people have headphones? How many people have been subjected to the remote neural monitoring that was patented back in the 70s? Do you think that these databases are burgeoning with information, that are hemorrhaging with information? Do you think? I do. And if you don't think you can get complex brain activity out of something like headphones, just search single channel EEG MIT. And you will come up with Media Lab, single channel EEG, and they'll tell you, along with others. This stuff has been done, folks. It's done. A database of representative neural activity profiles may be generated by performing measurements on a population of subjects. The population of subjects may include individuals whose nervous systems are determined to be healthy. Determined by a lack of known defects or trauma in their nervous system, right? None of those things. In some cases, the population may be divided into subpopulations, divided by age, divided by sex, or other characteristics that are known or suspected to affect a neural activity profile. Now, we could spend the whole show on ways in which we can imagine how these types of things would be categorized and classified. Characteristics that are known or suspected to affect a neural activity profile. What's your sexual persuasion? What's your political affiliation? What country are you from? What part of the country are you from? What kind of people are your parents? What kind of school did you go to? All of these things may ultimately, through big data analytics, because then AI can look at the subtle nuances, be able to come up with things that are known to be reproducible as it relates to affecting a neural activity profile. Bear in mind, Google, Facebook, Twitter, and others have access to everything. So big data analytics can be tied into this stuff to be able to understand the most subtle, delicate neural activity profile person to person and put them in the aggregate and begin to start compartmentalizing people. Neural activity profiles may be generated for subjects with various known disabilities. originating from defective function of the nervous system or due to other causes that are known to have various brain-related syndromes. Comparison of these neural activity profiles with the neural activity profiles for healthy subjects may facilitate the process of identifying specific frequencies of specific neural networks, because they're all unique, where deviations or changes, comparisons between a healthy neural activity profile are associated with a particular disability or a syndrome. So comparing and contrasting healthy people versus unhealthy people, or people, let's say we want to change the way society feels about a political candidate. Well, they could do big data analytics and try to understand why or what unique brainwave signatures exist in people who like Joe Biden or like Hillary, and then understand the difference between those brainwave profiles and those that like Trump. And then potentially try to artificially induce brainwave profiles in order to steer votes. Just speculating here. We've already had discussions in Congress, right, with Dr. Epstein about Google doing things like modifying search engine results. Well, hell, who needs search engine results when you can directly interface with the nervous system of anybody who has a mobile device, Wi-Fi, or wearable tech on or nearby their person? We're talking about crimes against humanity and treason. Treason. Not to mention just your general everyday spying and modern day wiretapping. Modern day taping, I think, is the term that the president used in an interview, because they can do that with this too. Let's see. It says here that in some cases, the comparison may be limited to those frequencies that are characteristic of or are suspected to be related to a particular suspected defect. So this is going in and taking measurements, or like using a tuning fork to tune a piano, go in and just harmonically go in there and start generating various signatures that you know are unique neural signatures in order to figure out what resonates and what doesn't resonate, in order to identify what's defective or not. From a therapeutic perspective, that might be useful. But if you can profile people's persuasions, sexual or otherwise, because that's what persuasions generally resonates with in most people in today's society, which is a disgusting topic all in and of itself, nonetheless, it's relevant. If you can understand the unique neural profile of a person's various persuasions, then this very same technology can be used for things like that. For example, the system may be configured to retrieve the frequencies that have been determined to be characteristic of one or more neural networks. We're talking about unique brainwave or nervous system profiles when they're activated. All of those being categorized, being able to be identified and artificially induced. That's what this company does. The comparison may then check whether measured neural activity differs at one of the identified characteristic frequencies from a reference neural activity profile that is retrieved from a database or reference neural activity profiles. Protocols may indicate a duration and an amplitude of an applied electromagnetic field of a particular frequencies that based on representative results, theory, or otherwise on a typical anticipated response or treatment. So not only is identification and application possible, but the duration and the strength of the duration is possible. Full spectrum here. Therefore, during application of the treatment field, a temperature map or other monitoring result of patient's head or nervous system may be acquired using a thermal camera or other sensors. For example, a measured temperature may be indicative of whether activity has increased as a result of the treatment in the region of the nervous system that is associated with a neural network that has been treated. Example, in a part of the brain where activity may be anticipated to increase as a result of treatment due to the recovery of a neural network in response to stimulation by the applied field. Now, you say to yourself, that can't happen. That just can't happen, can it? Well, let's go to Google's radar applications as it relates particularly to Google solely. But in their radar and gesture sensing applications, they indicate they can use any electromagnetic field, take control of that electromagnetic field and use it for radar. And I'm going to search the word temperature. And we see here that in this patent, radar-based biometric recognition, the field provided by a microwave radio element can be a three-dimensional volume field. For example, a hemisphere, a volumetric fan, a cube, or a cylinder, 3D radar field, or a surface applied to a human tissue, configured to receive reflections from the human tissue in 3D volume, such as skin, bone, or heart muscle, to provide biometric data in 3 dimensions, such as temperature of a person's arm at multiple points in and around the arm. Now, that's an example. Temperature of a person's arm, so it can be anywhere on the body or in the brain in 3 dimensions. The example they provided in the patent is the temperature of a person's arm at multiple points in and around the arm by the emitted 3-dimensional radar field from something like Google Soli. So the sensory component of these patents that we're looking at, they're possible with no contact. Would you like to see a 3-dimensional radar field? Here's an example of a 3-dimensional radar field. Here's a fan. Can also be 3-dimensional where they can scan through the hand. And these are directional. This is important. It talks about being able to use all of these types of things as either a computer processor or a transmitter/receiver to generate and or transmit radar-based information. Computers, PDA, cell phones, laptops, smart glasses, cameras, tablets, monitors, microwaves, refrigerators. The sky's the limit these days, folks, with the Internet of Things and the smart home. But hey, it's just for your convenience. Let's continue. One or more electromagnetic coils or antennas may be operated to generate one or more time-varying electromagnetic fields in accordance with a selected treatment protocol. The electromagnetic fields may be applied to a selected section of the body. For example, all or part of the head, torso, thorax, abdominal area, a limb, or another section of the body, or may be applied to the patient's entire body. What else is in this one before we move on? One or more of a reference neural network activity profile, a reference neural activity profile that characterizes neural activity of a neural network, so a unique brainwave signature or nervous system signature, identified neural network frequencies, representative amplitude, for example, in healthy subjects at a neural network frequency or other relevant data may be saved in a profile database. You think it's just your phone calls and your emails and your text messages? You think it's just the camera being turned on without you saying so? You think it's just the microphone being turned on without you saying so? Oh, no, 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 no. Intellectual property. Humans are the property. What does modern extraction of intellectual property look like? It doesn't stop with Chinese infiltration into universities, folks. Not when they can just log into your Wi-Fi and figure out if you really love your spouse, or if you're angry at your kids, or if you like your job, or if you like your government, or if you're having a great idea, an epiphany on some project you're working on at work, or utilizing your brain capacity while you're at home so that you're productive for your job while you're not being paid, because we are human resources. The sky's the limit with a bidirectional interface to the nervous system and the brain when you are looked at as chattel, as livestock, as property. Let's move on. Regeneration of nerve fibers. Also a BrainQ patent. They are literally able to regrow nerve fibers. So this goes back to the spinal cord stimulation regeneration thing, right? Regeneration of nerve fibers, BrainQ technologies. We are going to skim through these as quickly as we can. A lot of this one repeats. So various modifications, however, remain apparent to those skilled in the art, since the generic principles of this invention have been defined specifically to provide device and methods for stimulating the brain or different nervous systems of a subject by means of the resonance effect between the frequency of an electromagnetic field directed to a subject and the natural wave frequency of at least a target portion of the nervous system. What does that mean? It means that even though they're only talking about being able to use coils, for example, they can do this with in a variety of ways, which is why this open-ended statement here. Various modifications remain apparent to those skilled in the art, and that only the generic principles are present in the invention. This is true with just about any patent that you read. It is a way to protect intellectual property. Core aspect, the method and device of the present invention increases the thickness, the length, and the size of nerve fibers, both the injured fibers and healthy ones. Talking about human enhancement at this point, folks. Thus allowing better function even to existing systems. It is further within the scope that the apparatus and method of the present invention not only treat brain-related malfunctions, but also increase nerve fibers in other parts of the human body. In certain embodiments, the mode of activation of the invention is by resonating at least a portion of the nervous system transmission. For example, nerve fibers with a predetermined selected frequency according to a predetermined protocol, that accessing the database stuff. Without being bounded by theory, the present invention works on the principle that in addition to characteristic frequencies of electrical impulses traveling through the nervous system in the brain, neural networks, and chemical pulses across the synapses in the nervous system and the brain at predetermined wave frequencies, the present invention for the first time provides a means of resonating the informational signals and frequencies at which these informational waves are propagated. Direct connection with the natural functionality, electrical and chemical components of your brain and your nervous system. And here is resonant inductive coupling as it relates to electronic circuits. This is how your wireless charger works. When you put your phone on a power mat, oh, how cute. Put your phone on a power mat and you don't have to plug it in. Yeah. You know how they talk about coils, right? Talking about coils and all these patents. The CHI, open interface standard that defines wireless power transfer using inductive charging at distances of up to 4 centimeters. Well, they're looking at being able to wirelessly charge your phone in your pocket at distances of 30 feet using modern Wi-Fi. You can look that up, MIT and others. But let me show you the coils. Here is an example, a Nokia DT900 Qi charger. And here are, these are coils, folks. This is an array of coils. These coils can actually steer magnetic fields. And there are corresponding coils in your phone. And you can look up Apple is offering charging capabilities to their headphones through that headphone charging case. You can lay that on your Apple phone and charge your headphones from your cell phone, which means that it is able to emit directional magnetic fields. And that's in your pocket, in your bra, on your nightstand, next to your face when you're talking on your phone. And that's if you want to just stick to the literal words they're using in the patent, that they use coils to create homogeneous magnetic fields. Never mind, it can be done with just about any type of modern transmitting antenna with sophisticated software. And that's how you get things like Google's radar-based biometric recognition, their whole SOLI platform. Don't worry, we're going to look at these either today or on the next show because we only have about a half an hour left. So let's continue. Within the scope of this apparatus and method of this invention, right? So within the scope of this invention, not only to treat brain-related malfunctions, but also increases nerve fibers in other parts of the body. Resonating at least a portion of the nervous system transmissions, for example, nerve fibers with a predetermined selected frequency, according to what's in the database, predetermined protocol. It's just therapy, it's just medicine. It's only going to be used to help people. Without being bounded by theory, the present invention works on the principle that in addition to characteristic frequencies of electrical impulses traveling through neural networks and chemical pulses across the synapses at predetermined wave frequencies, the present invention for the first time provides means of resonating the informational signals and frequencies at which these informational waves are propagated. The present invention are configured to regenerate both injured fibers and healthy ones. It is thus within the scope that the present invention is configured to allow better function even to existing systems of the nervous system. Can you imagine what they're going to be able to grow in your body with the vaccines that are coming out? Operation Warp Speed. Or let's just emit or let loose another bioweapon so that we can stack genetic information into the species through open air cross-pollination. You know, the programs that they started with on the mosquitoes in places like Florida, hashtag Bill Gates. And subsequently, we're talking about using those vectors to deliver vaccines to people. Just imagine the things they can do with focus-controlled electromagnetic fields to be able to, in a sophisticated fashion, for example, what we're reading here, be able to regrow nerves. Oh, but it gets better. The next one that we're going to read talks about being able to grow and steer brain cells into specific locations in the brain. So let's continue so we can get to that one. The present invention demonstrates the usage, specific frequencies, and intensities in a predetermined protocol to regenerate nerve fibers for a specific body function. So they can localize it to a specific body function, such as movement, digestion, breathing, and the heart. The device and the method of this invention are configured to increase the size, length, and or thickness of nerve fibers connecting to a specific organs. And by that, allow it to function better, or in other words, resolve unstable operation by increasing the nerves controlling the organ operation. So they can target an organ, find its unique resonant frequency or the nerves that touch that organ, and grow them or destroy them on demand. Oh, the many ways to torture somebody with things like this, folks. Especially when you tie in the whole electromedicine and electroceuticals and tapping into things like the vagus nerve system and the NIH offering all kinds of funding to be able to map the peripheral nervous system down to the organs, to be able to understand with great specificity what the unique characteristics are about the peripheral nervous system, to get past the drawings that were done in the 1800s or the 1900s or whatever homeboy said, with Dr. Fauci sitting in the audience. Remember that video we watched for those of you that tune in on a regular basis? Yeah, well, once they know all that, then they can just start resonating them. And so you don't need the surgery or the injection. It can just be done with these electromagnetic fields, folks. Playing the body like it's an orchestra. A significant advantage of using the herein disclosed apparatus and method is reducing the need for using transplanted or otherwise invasive devices that regulate, for example, heartbeats. In a further aspect, nerve systems that may suffer injury can be regenerated. These new nerve fibers will be able to reduce the impact of injury in the case of spinal injuries, for example. What else is in this one? Talks about producing electromagnetic fields, the frequencies of about 0.01 DC hertz to about 100 hertz. And check this out, to the power of 10 to the -6 Gauss up to 100 Gauss. What is 10 to the -6 Gauss? You want to see what that is in Teslas? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's 10, so we should add one more zero. That's 1 to the -11. That's 0.0000011 zeros, or 10 zeros with the 1 after it. That's how small of a field is necessary for this type of manipulation. You think the FCC has this on their quote unquote radar? No, they don't. No, they don't. And I'll show you right now. Google wins approval for a new radar-based motion sensor. Oh, January 1st, 2019. Happy New Year, America. Google unit won approval from U.S. regulators to deploy a radar-based motion sensing device known as Project Soli. The FCC said in an order late on Monday that it would grant Google a waiver to operate the Soli sensors at higher power levels than currently allowed. The FCC said the sensors could also be operated aboard aircraft. The FCC said the decision will, quote, serve the public interest by providing for innovative device control features using touchless hand gesture technology, end quote. A Google spokeswoman did not immediately comment. Google said in documents filed with the FCC that the effort emerged from the work of Google's Advanced Technology and Projects Group, ATAP, that focuses on the development of mobile technologies. The FCC said the Soli sensor captures motion in a three-dimensional space using a radar beam to enable touchless control of functions or features that can benefit users with mobility and/or speech impairments. Aw, cute and fluffy. Google says the sensor can allow users to press an invisible button between the thumb and the index finger, or a virtual dial that turns by rubbing the thumb against the index finger. In a video on its website, Google said a user could operate a smartwatch, scroll through music, or adjust the volume by simply motioning using the system. Google added that the radar signal could penetrate fabrics, enabling controls that could work in a pocket or a backpack. The company says that even though these controls are virtual, the interactions feel physical and responsive, as feedback is generated by the haptic sensations of the fingers touching. Google says the virtual tools can approximate the precision of natural human hand by hand motion, and the sensor can be embedded in wearables, phones, computers, and vehicles. In March, Google asked the FCC to allow its short-range interactive motion sensing Soli radar to operate in the 57 to 64 gigahertz frequency band at power levels consistent with European telecommunication standards. Facebook raised concerns with the FCC that Soli sensors operating in the spectrum band at higher power levels may have issues coexisting with other technologies. That's because Facebook's getting into 5G. After discussions, Google and Facebook jointly told the FCC in September that they agree the sensors could operate at higher than currently allowed power levels without interference, but at lower levels than previously proposed by Google. The company told the FCC that without the higher power levels, that field testing showed blind spots could occur close to the sensor location. So in order for it to work well for the user, they have to crank up the power. So Facebook told the FCC in September, this was in 2018, that it expected a variety of use cases to develop with respect to the new radar devices, including Soli. Soli is not the only company getting into this industry. So all that said, right? Let's continue. The device of the present invention relies on the fact that each region of the nervous system has its own operating frequency. This means that the transmission of electromagnetic waves do not have to be targeted to a specific region of the brain. I'm going to read that again. It's kind of important. The device of the present invention relies on the fact that each region in the nervous system has its own operating frequency. This means that the transmission of electromagnetic waves do not have to be targeted to a specific region of the brain. Instead, the transmission of a particular frequency over a relevant portion of the nervous system will exert an effect. Therefore, parts of the nervous system having different operating frequencies will not resonate, and mainly a region of interest will be activated in response to the transmission. Now, that is a remarkably telling paragraph. The present invention further presents that different parts of the nervous system are activated by the transmission of different field intensities. The examples further demonstrate that the frequency, intensity, and duration of the treatment have different outcomes, such that the transmission is a 3D array when frequency, intensity, and duration play a role in determining the exact nervous system, and its desired section is targeted for enhancing its operational capabilities, thus reducing the symptoms of the patient syndrome or condition. So, I think we are going to move on. It's pretty self-explanatory here that the body is a complex tuning circuit, and based on the unique electromagnetic or other energy wave profiles, you can interface with specific systems within the body and not interface with others. And they are mapping these things out and putting them in databases. We have 15 minutes. We need to get through this one. And I guess we're going to have the cool, fun radar parts. We'll share those on Sunday, Monday, because they go hand in hand with this. When you talk about three-dimensional radar fields and radar being in everything to sense everybody and everything around for the Internet of Things, this is what it's about, folks. How are humans going on the Internet? We're looking at it. We are looking at it. Method and device for enhancing brain activity. An apparatus is provided for stimulating brain neural networks of a subject comprising at least one transmitter configured to generate an electromagnetic field through the brain neural networks of a subject, at least one brainwave measuring device for detecting subject brainwave frequency. A database for storing and analyzing natural and affected brain scans. A predetermined protocol for transmission of the electromagnetic wave frequency profiles. The apparatus further provides a resonance effect, thereby inducing newly generated brain cells to migrate towards a brain tissue area having the pathology or lesion of interest, and initiating new brain pathways at the brain region of interest. So they can regrow or create circuits in the brain using the body's own production of brain cells. That is what this is saying. The invention relates to an electromagnetic device or devices and methods for therapeutically treating body tissue, and more particularly to a device or a method for enhancing and stimulating nervous systems activity and related molecular events. Related molecular events using a variety of electromagnetic energy frequencies. Many forms of brain's cellular plasticity based on new sensitive research methods are known in the art. In some distinct areas of all adult mammalian brains, new neurons and glial cells originating from neural stem cells are continuously produced. New neurons and glial cells from neural stem cells are continuously produced. In a normal adult brain, SVZ-derived neuroblasts migrate along the rostral migratory stream to the olfactory bulb, where these cells differentiate into interneurons and replace those that have died. So when you think about your brain regenerating itself, because the cells have a certain life and they regenerate, and right, that's why your brain functions from birth to death. It's not the same brain cells from the time you're born till you die. That's what this is describing. They're talking about the neural stem cells that create new brain cells that then travel down a brain highway, so to speak. And along that brain highway, they get differentiated into different types of brain cells and then move along to go replace the ones that are dying in your brain. Natural cellular reproduction or respiration, what do you want to call it? So another piece to lay the groundwork. It is also noted that learning coexists with higher brain activity, thus suggesting that if proper training is employed, brain plasticity will allow the regions subjected to the training to improve their activity in terms of both higher connectivity between existing brain cells and the number of cells functioning. So you stimulate the brain while undergoing learning activities, and you get more brain cells there and you get more of them interconnecting. That's how memorization, muscle memory, all of that stuff, that's how that works. And they also say in here 10 hertz, stimulating at 10 hertz interfaces with the sympathetic nervous system. And in this case, using artificial electromagnetic transmissions without interfering with other nerve pathways. So that's the groundwork. It says here, transmitter provides a resonance effect whereby newly generated brain cells, right, they can steer them, inducing newly generated brain cells to migrate towards brain tissue having an area of interest or a lesion of interest, and initiating new brain pathways, new neural circuits at a brain region of interest. Transmitter is adapted for providing the electromagnetic field useful, stimulating the target brain system by means of inducing a resonance effect between the frequency of the magnetic field and the natural brainwave frequency of the subject brain system. What they're talking about is being able to identify the specific regions and or circuits in the brain and creating a resonance effect in them to stimulate them artificially to get brain cells to go there and reinforce or replace and to enhance those brain circuits. I'm going to add in there on my own, they can potentially kill brain circuits too. They can melt your freaking brain. Just my opinion. The resonance effect is defined by the enhanced activity visible as a consequence of brain mapping. So they resonate, they see a change. It's the change they're looking for. They know they got what they're looking for. The resonance effect generates an electrochemical transmission in the nerve cells and neuron of the determined nervous system. Talks about a CPU, including a database comprising data useful for mapping the brain waves of a subject in order to adjust the protocol, the treatment of the subject. The CPU also can be adapted to control the wave generator, the antennas, and the timing, the treatment timing. The predetermined protocol includes a plurality of distinct frequencies within the range of the distinct brain activities. That is the database. Wherein the frequencies are conformed in accordance to specific brain tissue, known to be capable of having an activity of interest. Says here, the transmission of the magnetic field is synchronized with the cell cycle for migrating nascent brain cells. I should have highlighted that. I don't know why I didn't. The transmission of the magnetic field is synchronized with the cell cycle, the reproduction cycle, for migrating nascent, that's new, brain cells. Further, wherein the stimulating procedure results in the creation of new brain paths of interest. You want to talk about wiring up the brain? That's what this is saying. The creation of new brain paths, the creation of neural circuits. Again, it talks about the power 10 to the power of -6 Gauss, up to 100 Gauss, that affect the desired nervous system. I'm going to go back here and let's just say 100 Gauss. That's 0.01 Tesla. That's 0.01 Tesla. Transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, right? Transcranial magnetic stimulation. It says on Wiki, and we'll go somewhere else for those of you who don't like Wiki, it says that transcranial magnetic stimulation is on the order of 2 to 3 Teslas. 2 to 3 Teslas. And we're looking at maximum Teslas for what we've been talking about tonight, as noted in the patents, being 0.01 Teslas. Manipulating nervous systems, regrowing nerves, directing where brain cells go, resonating nervous system and brain circuits, being able to restore paralysis, treat Alzheimer's, epilepsy, Parkinson's. So let's continue because we are down to 8 minutes. Applied to certain diseases and syndromes, autism, familial dysautonomia, Prader-Willi, epilepsy, the spectrum of PDD, the spectrum of ADHD, retardation, cerebral palsy, and other brain-related syndromes. Further, wherein the apparatus decreases symptoms of brain injuries like brain trauma, right? Stroke, multiple sclerosis, symptoms of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, Parkinson's disease, and any other degeneration diseases of the brain. The step of defining the protocol, including providing an electromagnetic frequency profile, including compensatory brain waves, so they can apply frequencies and compensate for the brain waves that are ongoing, which is an insane amount of precision. Further within the protocol provides a resonance effect, thereby inducing newly generated brain cells to migrate toward a brain tissue having an area of interest or lesion of interest, and initiating new brain pathways. I am saying this over and over again because it is remarkably amazing what this stuff can do, good and bad. It is another subject or another object of this invention to disclose the method detailed above, further comprising the step of identifying a site of a pathological condition of or in the body of a subject, wherein the step of selecting the body region comprises selecting a neural sensitive region of the body remote from the site, which means that they can potentially resonate some other place in the body and have it interface with somewhere else in the body. And that goes back to the electroceutical, electromedical piece where they can tap into the nervous system and resonate or interface with an organ or use that neural pathway, that nerve, to talk to the brain. What else is in here? It says here that it's an object of this invention, an apparatus for stimulating the brain neural networks of a subject, and it's adapted for transmitting electromagnetics to a region having an activity of interest. In this case, they call it interest A. They're separating A, B, C, D, which includes surrounding regions having operating frequencies, right? The electromagnetic waves having a predetermined frequency selected as appropriate for the particular deficient region recruit cells, in this case from region A, because that's what we're talking about, which respond to the same predetermined frequency as region B and induce migration of region A cells into region A. Further, wherein the nervous regions such as B, C, D, and E having different operating frequencies will not resonate and therefore will not be active in response to the transmission. What this means is that they have been able to identify and isolate specific resonant characteristics of centers in the brain or neural circuits in the brain or circuits in the nervous system and be able to apply electromagnetic fields and only interface with the ones with those specific resonant characteristics. So the many, many puppet strings are going to be the multiple resonant magnetic or electromagnetic fields simultaneously being applied to then do things like play the piano in your brain or manipulate your meat suit around like Pinocchio. And that's a little dramatic, but trying to provide you a visual effect of what it is they're talking about here. Isolation of neural circuits, being able to identify each one of them independently and potentially simultaneously stimulating them on demand without interfacing with circuits that are not of interest. It says here various modifications, however, will remain apparent to those sealed in the art, since the generic principles of the present invention have been defined. Just the generic principles are identified here in this patent. Specifically, do not provide a device and a method for stimulating a brain or different nervous system subject by means of the resonant effect, blah, 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 blah. What they're really saying here is that they're identifying and illustrating the principles, and it by no means is restrictive to the overall scope of the patent. They're protecting their intellectual property with this. And what this tells me is that right here in the beginning, various modifications will remain apparent. It can be done in more ways than what is described in this patent. So we have 2 minutes left. The effects obtained is that the increased activity in the specified nervous system will induce new brain cell regeneration. So they can artificially regenerate cells. They can probably accelerate that or slow it down. These newly generated brain cells are induced and recruited to migrate towards an area of the brain neural networks having the pathology or lesion of interest. Again, very important. That's why I'm saying it so many times. Thus, initiating new brain cells that will be engaged in the existing pathways at the brain region of interest. The predetermined protocol is a treatment profile comprising different frequency transmission sessions, intensities. The protocol is adjusted to a brain system of specific interest. The reason I said that so many times is because we can take this and we can apply it to, let's say, the Chinese party. What's stopping them from melting their population's brains, regrowing neural circuits in such a way that they all have the same brain profile so they can be jacked in to artificial intelligence? Now that sounds like a creepy sci-fi movie, but think about it. If you can stunt the uniqueness of a human and control how brain cells and brain circuits are formed in order to have common resonant characteristics that are the same human to human to human throughout an entire population, you get robots, you get automatons, you get a very, very compliant population and a potentially very, very lethal military, highly integrated into AI.